Hey, how's it going? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and today I'm joined by Connor Sexton, the Senior Product Designer working on the Luna recording system. We're going to talk a little bit more about the features and technology that's going into Luna. So how's it going today, Connor?
It's going great, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing well, man.
Nice, good.
I know Luna's got a very interesting file management system and that it's all happening inside of one file. How does that work?
Yeah, so Luna is based on a database technology for storing and controlling data that's totally ubiquitous today. So when you run Luna on your system, there's a database that's created that knows about your sessions, knows about the files in those sessions, and then the session package itself is an instance of that database. And all of the files that you record in or import are stored in that session package. And that gives us a lot of power and flexibility over time and unlocks capabilities that are really hard to do with different kinds of data management systems. So it's a very powerful foundation for working with lots of media, working with versions of media, dealing with things that are really complicated and cumbersome and require multiple applications. All can really be done within Luna based on the technology that we have.
That's really cool. And then also, since it's a database system, that's kind of what unlocks the unlimited undo.
That's right.
And the fact that everything that you do is stored and kept.
That's right. You don't have to save your changes as you make them or after you make them because they're literally transacting in the data and saying changing this clip position or changing the volume, and that as soon as you let go of the mouse, that has been saved.
Yeah,
It's really
it's also great too because this way you're not ending up with like some audio files on the desktop, some in your downloads folder, some on an external drive. It is all self-contained in one place.
That is definitely one of the major problems this solves is sending documents to others and the infamous missing files, dialogues that you might get in other experiences. That doesn't happen here.
That's great. But then also the audio engine that kind of underpins all of this in Luna, we've done some special stuff there too, haven't we?
That's right. Because everything on the timeline is referenced in this database-driven manner, it makes it really easy to do really advanced rendering and real-time changes to sounds. So when you're recording in Luna, the sample rate is just determined by the hardware. So there's no strict setting when you create a session or when you work with a session that says everything must be this particular sample rate.
Yeah.
You can bring something in at a different sample rate, it converts it. You can record at a particular sample rate, and then if you change your sample rate on the hardware for any reason, then all of the files that are at a different sample rate on the timeline are sample rate converted in real time. And in the background, a rendering process kicks off that doesn't disrupt audio processing or editing or operation of the application. And as soon as it's done, it replaces that file. So it's kind of like a real-time plus rendered clip engine that's incredibly powerful. And that lets you do things like record at 96K to get the highest fidelity while you're tracking, and then drop your sample rate down to say like 48. And in just a matter of moments, you've got cached files of your entire session at 48K so that you can run more instances of your favorite UAD2 plugins or native plugins using audio units and benefit from the performance enhancement across the board on your system by lowering the sample rate. Then you could kick it back up when you're ready to export so that you have a true 96K playback.
That's awesome. And it also means that you're never going to have the dreaded like chipmunk, oh crap, I recorded this at 44 and I brought it into a 48 session.
That's
or something
right.
like
No
that.
clocking errors that happen because of it, because it's just going to figure out the right sample rate to play back at and convert in real time and then swap out with the render.
So I'm also really curious, how does Luna fit in with other DAWs and other environments?
Yeah, so we want it to be as easy as possible to exchange between Luna and whatever workstation you use today. In some cases, people use multiple workstations. We expect that's absolutely a part of the process, and we wanted to start from a place where Luna could participate.
Gotcha.
So it's really easy to come in. You can create a session from an AAF. And as part of the new session command, you can choose the AAF file. You can choose a MIDI file that will bring in, of course, the MIDI files for instruments, but also the tempo map.
Nice.
So most workstations today support AAF export. It is of the sort of exchange formats like it, the best way to get a representation of the media with fades and in some cases even automation. So that's giving you a really strong start. And then with the MIDI, you're basically back to what you were working with in your other workstation.
And then what about getting back out of Luna and going to a different DAW if you needed to?
Yep, so we've got a couple commands that make it really easy to take all of your tracks and get them into another environment using basically the mixdown commands that are available. So it's one workflow that lets you, if you want, make a single like 2-track export or export a audio file for every single track.
Yep.
And we've got a way to configure that that's an export all tracks mode, where in one operation you're creating a file for the output of every audio track and instrument track. and you can choose whether or not to render effects into those. So whatever inserts are on there, you can say yes or no to bringing those out of Luna.
Nice.
And you can also create a MIDI file simultaneously. So
Nice.
any of the audio from your instruments can be generated along with the MIDI. So if you want to tweak it somewhere else, you can do that. And basically at the end of your mixdown export, you get a folder with all the audio files and a MIDI file that you can drag into another environment and recreate the tempo map and bring in all of your source material.
Yeah, so that makes it really flexible, adapting Luna to kind of fit into whatever part of the process people want.
That's right. Wherever you feel like Luna could work for you with your workflow today, you can make it work with these features. And it's really easy to come in, it's really easy to go out because we've made it so that you can do that. It's an intention of ours that, we're not going to take over your entire workflow right away. We want you to see what we've got to jump on board and come along with us. But of course, most people today are using more than one workstation, and we want to participate in that.
Yeah, it sounds like we've done a lot to make it really easy getting in and out of Luna. But speaking of making things easy, what are some of the workflow enhancements that we've kind of programmed into Luna?
Yeah, so we set out to make Luna feel really natural. A major goal of ours is that there's no roadblocks to just getting things done and feeling like you're having a musically creative and productive experience.
Yeah.
So to do that, we've done things like skip the idea of editing modes and editing tools and made sure that the gestures that you would expect and the placement of the mouse that is familiar to you when you're just working with items in a computer feels natural for working with audio in a computer.
Yeah.
So you can fade and edit and trim and grab notes and move things around with really specific, simple gestures that become obvious to you as you move your mouse over the composition. Other things that we've done are take really sort of complex menu diving tasks where you go look for a preset or look for a particular plugin or route the inputs and outputs of tracks or change your track view and just set things up in your environment. And we've put those things in a browser that lets you keep that browser open and search it. And also updates contextually as you move around tracks in different configurations. It's like an inspector in a lot of ways, where if you want to add a plugin, you can just open it and search and then choose that plugin or press enter and choose that plugin and it goes away. Or if you want to search for all of your different instances of the LA2A, for instance, you could type Teletronics and all of your incredible U82 plugin models of that classic hardware show up and you can arrow key around to audition it. Or if you're wanting to find just the automation parameters that are used for plugins, you can click a little button in the browser and see, oh, here's what I've automated. Things like that. We wanted to make the environment of a really complex process, like producing music, as easy to navigate and interact in as possible.
Having used it, having that left side to be able to search and quickly route things, and also the workflow toolbar up top, seems like everything that's there is exactly what I need at the right moment.
Yeah, you touched on something that we really like and think is a really great addition, which is the workflow panels that are contextual for recording, for mixing, for working with MIDI, for editing, that give you sort of hints about some of the deeper features that really are complicated tasks in audio workflows that almost require an extensive engineering level knowledge, like routing cues and setting up a cue mix for artists, these things that are bread and butter for audio engineers, but really can be very cumbersome in most places. And that also speaks to things that we've done in the mixer that are just really natural, like dedicating a cue section and having the whole thing be navigated by a navigation strip that lists all of the sections. Nothing ever gets lost. You can hide stuff, but it's never kind of a mystery as to where it went. There's always a breadcrumb or a clue in the user interface that shows you what's there, shows you what's available, and lets you interact with the environment in a way that works for you. You can open parts of it, close parts of it, see the signal of the entire session at a glance with a meter bridge. There's so much in the user interface that clues you in to what's going on in your environment and in your composition that you really can't get lost. There's nothing that's hidden. It was a major goal for us.
Yeah, I really love that. Well, it's all fun to sit over here and kind of talk about it, but I've got a desk over there with Luna booted up. Do you mind actually kind of walking us through some of these features?
Absolutely. I'd love to show you some stuff.
Great, let's do it.
Cool. Let's start by looking at the responsive GUI elements that show you what you can do when you're editing audio in Luna. So I'm just going to move my mouse over these clips, and you can see that they start to respond based on the available edits that appear for that clip. So you can see here when I'm hovering over this clip that top left corner, top right corner, a little triangle appears, and if I click on that and drag it out, that's creating a fade in. and a fade out. And if I click in the bottom left corner where you get this little right angle indicator, that's how you start to trim the clip. So there's nothing that's invisible. It's always responsive to where you are and shows you what you can do. Similarly with this fade, I can click on it and drag it around to change the fade shape. You can even change fade shape types and continuously vary this by dragging up and down and left and right.
Wow.
And all these edit operations that you just saw can apply across selections of tracks. So I'm going to just grab this fade tool on the bottom clip, and you can see that because it was in selection,
it's now editing the other one as well.
That's right, exactly. So all of these gestures work that way. Some of the other great things that are available at a clip level in Luna is pitch and gain. So on all of these clips, let me just select all of them and I'll show you. If I click and drag this gain fader, I'm simultaneously gaining up and down all of the selected clips. Let me add this one in. So once these are all selected and in range, I can option click to default all of them back to 0 clip gain. I can click up and down and drag to set all of their pitches. And those things are just built right into the clip at any time, and you can see what the values are. You can even double click on them and set in an exact value, like if you want particular really specific amount of semitones or a really specific amount of gain on all of these. That just got applied in addition to everything that was already there on all the clips, or I can just of course set them back down to default really easily, really contextually, without having to think about tools, without having to think about modes.
Obviously we're kind of seeing you just demonstrating the things here, but again, the unlimited undo comes in handy so often.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing where like everything that I was doing all the way back to even before I opened this session to sit down with you is undoable. So you don't have to be in that moment to undo it. You could, get a session from someone and open it up, and first thing you do is hit Command Z and see what was the last thing they were doing if you wanted, or what was the last thing that I was doing in this session, and get some context for that. And it's really powerful.
So what about like playlists? Do we have any functionality around that?
Sure, let's look at that. We call playlists track versions in Luna, and you can access them up here in this tracks ruler. There's a little indicator that opens the versions panel, and there's a lot of really familiar ways for anyone that's familiar with playlists and other workstations. Just as a professional editor, a lot of the gestures are going to be really similar. But we also have this great versions list display here that lets you see everything that's in a track really easily without having to worry about changing the track name. You can do all the basics that you would expect, like add new versions. I can do that with key commands here. I can also do it by clicking on the plus. And again, that's doing it for all of these selected tracks really naturally. You can duplicate playlists, you can rename them and delete them as well. So you can manage all of the versions that you've done over time. And as you can see in this session, there's a lot of takes that have gone into it and different takes on each number of tracks. So it's really easy to see at a glance without having to go menu diving, like, oh yeah, here's all of these versions. Editing commands work really naturally between them. So if I wanted to take this part from this take and then just switch these really quickly, I can use the shift up and down keys and then paste that take in there and do comping in that manner.
So yeah, this is gonna make that comping workflow just kind of fast and natural.
Yep, that's right.
Really cool. And I love too, like how easy it is to select things. And as you're selecting audio regions over on the right-hand side, you're also selecting the tracks on the left-hand side.
Yes.
And now we call it selection grouping, right?
Yep.
So whatever is selected gets acted on together.
That's right. We have a selection grouping feature that lets all of the mix functions apply to the selected tracks or not. You can turn it on and off. So let me show you that in the mixer view, where it's very easy to see that as these tracks are selected and have this blue outline on them, toggled by pressing Command G to turn selection grouping on and off, when I make an adjustment, the relative adjustment is applied to all the other controls. Same with like switches and anything else like insert assignment. So here you can see the insert browser, where if I wanted to go in and add an EQ on all of these, I could. So if I go down here and just add an EQ, then all of those got inserted on everything that was selected.
There's also a really cool feature that I love in Luna called Spill.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Spill works by showing you all of the sources to a bus. So by clicking Spill on the main fader, what I'm showing you here is basically the submixing of the session. So the signal flow in a lot of ways is represented really naturally by the Spill button. So what you see here are all the buses that are making up the submix before it gets to the main fader. And then of course each one of these has its source tracks. So I can really easily open and close the drum bus almost like a folder just by command clicking on Spill to add it or remove it from the list of spilled tracks. So it's kind of like an additive spill. So that just spilled out all of my drums. So what this lets you do is have a really condensed powerful mixing view where you're just working at the bus level, like adjusting strings and adjusting the different components like keys and guitar and bass, and then saying, but right now I've got to go fix the snare because it's way too loud. So you come in here and just bring down the snare and make other quick adjustments to the actual source to that bus, and then you close the bus back up in this view, giving you really quick, powerful, contextual way of working in your mix where you're working at this simplified level that gives you the overview control and then can really easily navigate into the detailed control.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been super powerful, and especially for submixing and being able to zoom out on your session in a way and kind of think more macro about your balance.
Exactly.
But then get right back in and also make more micro tweaks as well.
That's right.
What about MIDI? How does Luna handle MIDI inputs and instruments and all the like?
Yeah, sure. Let's start a new session just to go straight to some MIDI editing. So in this new session, I'm going to pull up some instances of Shape, which is our instrument toolkit, and is just this incredibly fast and incredibly satisfying instrument to use because all the sounds are fantastic and you can just be creative with it right away. So what I'm going to do is pull up a drum kit, and that sounds good. And I'm just going to make a 2-bar loop and show you the quantized features in Luna. All right, so I can click this Q up in the top of the clip header area and really just quickly come over here and click on a grid value in the quantize area. So that's incredibly easy to access. Again, very contextual. It's not hidden, but of course you can also access it with key commands. And there's other features like swing and strength. Let me just hear that back. Good enough. And I'm just going to add another part. I'm going to pull up Minimoog. And to show you the contextual browser and how useful it is, I'm just going to select the Minimoog track and record enable it, and just kind of go find a preset. I like that. That one feels good. So that, again, was really just easy to navigate through the presets to stay in the creative flow. So let me record some of this. I'm going to quantize this again. And we're starting to build a loop really easily.
Yeah.
Before I add any other parts, let me just show you something really fundamental about the way that MIDI clips in Luna work. They function essentially like an audio clip where all of the material is constrained to the boundaries of the clip. So as I trim this, it's really just adjusting where notes end. And if I trim this side, it's just adjusting where notes begin. This can be a really powerful way of actually editing on grid when a performance isn't. So if you have a roll-on or an early pickup and you just need that to be snapped to the grid, you can just trim the clip and you don't have to do anything with the notes underlying.
Oh, that's nice.
But then if you want to move that around, of course, it's still there. The performance is still as it was. Another thing that's really nice is all of this happens right inside of the timeline with a track view. So you can enter and exit this view really simply by changing between notes and clips view. And of course, in notes view, you can do basic things like add to the selection by arrow keying and holding shift. You can increase or decrease the pitch of notes by pressing the up and down arrow keys. Things that you'd really expect in a MIDI editor are all here available for you at a foundational level in Luna to get you producing music really quickly and with a really natural experience.
Nice. So what about editing velocity? How does that happen?
Sure, there's a couple ways. Really simply, you can make a selection of tracks. Let's actually, let me show you a couple other cool things to get into that topic. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press this fold button on the drums. And what that does is it shows you just the notes that have been used.
Nice.
And that will let me do something like select the snare. And if I have the snare selected and hold down Command, I can increase or decrease the velocity really simply just by holding Command and dragging up and down.
Nice.
I can also open a velocity lane that also will be used to show other MIDI CCs by clicking on this velocity symbol in the top of the clip. So again, we're putting everything right at the surface level so that you don't have to go hunting for common features.
That's great.
So with this available, here I can grab and see the velocity and adjust it to where I want it to be and actually do some creative just penciling of the hi-hat here. So I'm just kind of drawing in a little sine wave to get some dynamics in the hi-hat a little bit. So this lane as well can be used to quickly find any of your MIDI CCs by search or by scrolling and finding them in the list.
So those are some really handy MIDI editing features. Are there any other advanced MIDI capabilities?
Yeah, there's one thing I want to show you about duplicating performances that has to do with keeping a natural feel but still editing on grid, which can be a really challenging thing with a MIDI performance. So let's duplicate these out, and then I'm going to add a piano part, and I'm going to just make this my whole loop area. So I've just made a 4-bar selection, and of course made of two 2-bar loops. Then I'm going to add a new track. I'll pull up Ravel, our grand piano. And I'm just going to add a really basic part that's kind of playing chords, and I'm going to kind of roll them on to sort of emphasize the point here.
Nice.
So let me see how this sounds really quick. And I'm just going to keep this. I'm going to bring this clip out here, and you can obviously see in this case how steeply rolled on this is. And what I want to show you is how when I select this range of notes, I get this background selection area that's indicating what range will be duplicated when I perform a command. So if this is feeling really good to me, the way that these notes are rolling on, when I have this selection in place, all I have to do is press Command D, and the edit actually aligns to the grid based on the selection. So it repeats that in this really natural way that helps you preserve feel and helps you actually retain the most important aspects of the performance, which is the performer's feel, but stay on grid when editing. So I think that's a really cool feature for working with duplicate. There's other things you can do with that, which is adjust the duplication range. So if you want to like repeat this at a different level, or say every other bar, you can make that sort of adjustment at the top level in the all tracks ruler to do really powerful duplicate editing after you've recorded some MIDI.
That's really cool. Man, it's so fascinating. Every time I sit next to you, I learn something new about Luna and some of these kind of hidden down there features that, once you kind of learn the shortcut or you learn that it's available to you, you can instantly see like, oh yeah, this is a great way to duplicate without having to worry so much about like, did I cut it in the exact right spot? Did I make my clip exactly 2 bars before I duplicated?
Right.
The fact that we're kind of taking care of that for people, it's just really cool.
Yeah, it's all about making it so that people can have fun making music again and not have to think as much about the tool.
That's awesome. Great. Well, Connor, thank you so much for sitting down and kind of taking us through some of the deeper aspects of Luna.
Totally.
And yeah, with this quick little walkthrough here, I hope that really kind of gives people a good idea of some of the power and capabilities that we're putting in there.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Thanks, Ben.
Awesome. Cool. And if you guys want to learn more about Luna, just head to uaudio.com/Luna, and I'll see you guys next time.